which is probably where I'm going to be for the next couple of months. It will make sense. It will make sense later in life. So again, apologies that I had to move this. So I had spoken to Alex. Initially, what was supposed to happen this morning was supposed to take less time. It's still ongoing, but I've already pushed it as much as possible. There are a few things that I want to do. So one call. So a lot of the things I do, and I think that I have never been involved in fishing before. And two, because I think that it's not really about saying a lot, because you're going to hear a lot over the course of the entire program that has been organized. And so I'm going to try to condense it to what I think is the most reasonable, most take a break for a moment or two. I will let you guys know, maybe just mute and then come back. But I won't be here on anything. Don't worry. Okay, so let's start. I think that um, it's supposed to be about winning in national competition, but I think that what I'm going to discuss is winning competitions at a whole. And I'm going to say a few things that will sound counterintuitive, but allow me to explain. The very first one is that winning a competition, any competition, is a combination of a number of factors. Some of them are within your control, some of them are not, right? So what this means is that you can put in the very best of your effort and maybe not win. And comparatively, there will be tournaments where you don't put in as much effort and you might still win. What's important, or the important distinction, is that you cannot tell the difference between one tournament and the other. You cannot tell when you are right. Because it's a better man at least you will be canally and then you so you don't know have everything going in your favor. You don't know the tournament where you're going to have a bunch of things going in your favor or nothing going in your favor. And so usually a lot more practical to plan and practice. I think nothing will go in your favor. So if things do go in your favor, you're good. And if they don't, you're still good. What do I mean by these factors? So just think about it broadly. A competition is like when you call it a competition like tournament, it sounds bigger than it is. But it's really just a series of events, right? So it's a series of events. It is the tournament preparation, preparing up for the actual tournament. It's a what do you call it? It is walking to round and handling round. It's the first time it's teaching, it is responding to your eyes, it is acting and getting the right sort of feedback after a tournament. It is the small social interactions that don't count for much but buy you goodwill. It's a improving on yourself and creating from round to the next. It is making the most of roles when you get them. Really, that does matter. And it is taking opportunity when they are taken, right? And so if you condense the tournament to be smaller events, it makes it a lot easier to approach them on a piece by piece basis. And it makes it a lot easier to plan for them as a whole. You might not be able to plan for a specific emotion, but you can probably plan for emotion type. You can plan for a variety of emotion types. That means that even if you don't have a full knowledge of, even if you don't have most knowledge about every single emotion, you're in a better position to handle things. You can practice for goals, opening house, closing house, OG, like all of that fun stuff. You don't necessarily have a perfect reflection of what this tournament is and what it's always going to do. But you can put yourself in a position where whatever it is, you have to set adequately to handle it. The last thing I want to say for this overview is that when you prepare for a tournament, it also prepare for you. You should also prepare, you have to prepare for it with the mindset that other people are also going to prepare for it. That's an important thing. And I think that this is something that oftentimes with being in learning, it's easy to get wrong because, we have training more frequently than anyone. Like we have trainers that will do a lot to train you. We have alumni that will stick to you. But I think it's also reasonable to assume that a lot of people will put in the same or even greater effort. Not necessarily just because, like some people just because they're up and just fun to hear that, but also because the incentives for success are often very similar across the board. What this means is every single thing that you get here, keep it in mind in three ways. Number one, that's there's internal competition in right? And internal competition is cutthroat. I think that the person who is in the best position to tell you about that is probably me again. Like the cutthroat internal competition. So keep it in mind that everybody who's here and everybody who likely has access to this information has the same access to information as you for the cutthroat internal information. But two, for the cutthroat internal competition, but two, that everybody else, everywhere else is also going to work hard about it. What it means then is that the difference between you and somebody else in the store or you and somebody else in the circuit is how much more you are willing to do, how much more energy, how much more time. It sounds simple, right? It sounds like, yeah, just be a bit more, but being a bit more can mean a lot. I'm going to draw examples not just from how I personally train from tournaments, but how other people I know have trained, both in general, but also specifically for tournaments. Right? So that's the overview done. Let's start with the very first thing, right? Pre-tournament. What do you do before a tournament? Um, so preparing for winning really is for me often a day one activity, which means that people who win or the people who consistently win often have already secured the victory long before the tournament started. And here's a bunch of things. The first one is keeping yourself in tournament shape. So the problem that a lot of people miss is that they try to get in tournament shape before the tournament, which is not as bad as going into the tournament out of tournament shape, but it's not as effective. And here's the implication from for if you are a footballer, right? You do not simply start training, let's say, a like a month or two to the World Cup, right? If you are any form of athlete, right? So debating is a sport. You don't start training just before the tournament. You try to keep yourself consistently in a mindset and condition where you are, you know, your mind is connected to what you have to do. You're physically in a sort of position where you are good with it. And like that's extremely important because when you start your planning too close to the tournament, there are a bunch of things that happen. Number one, it's very likely that there are a lot of things you want to cover that you're able to cover. Two, likely that you get fatigued because intensive training right before tournament is fine, right? Intensive training before tournament is fine. Sometimes it focuses on specific things about the specific tournament. That also means that if those variables change, you are in a bad position. For example, oftentimes you are already training right before tournament is focused more on team dynamics, right? And exploiting those team dynamics and making the best out of them. But team dynamics are great. But if that's the only thing you have, that's the main thing you have, then when you get to a situation where, it's less about the team. Like, you're facing two very good teams, or you're facing a very good team. In that case, you have to be both solid individuals and solid as a team. Simply being a good team becomes insufficient. What means is that you don't simply start training for the tournament right before. There are no ways to look at this. The first one is that in 9 out of 10, you will know all the tournaments are going to happen in a year. Right, like from last year, most most people should already know all the tournaments are happening this year. But at the very least, things this is specifically about national. You know that nationals happen every year. You know that the second period where nationals happen usually August, September, unless it's spring. What that means is that from January, if you already have a income, it should prepare to go well, that's August, because if you don't, and if you start training, let's say you only start training in July or June, you will learn a lot. And yes, again, if you're very lucky, your things go your way, you might you might be very, very good. But if you train from January, there's a lot more you want, there's a lot more. Okay, so we're talking about keeping in shape, but keeping in shape isn't necessarily always intensive training. Because again, the problem with intensive training is burnout. Like the thing is, it's cool, it's fun, but it can be intensive, and oftentimes it can get tiring. You can have moments where you've been doing it for so long that it becomes harder, but also sometimes doing too often, too close, often means that you get stuck in patterns because you have less time to create, you have less time to think about individual rounds. You're thinking more about the next round. Like, what do you do? The first thing I think is to always study. And I think a lot, but it's like everyone, people don't take it that seriously for whatever reason. But the truth is, the people who are best at debating are often people who have more information from a wider range of sources. Like debating really is always going to be about events. Like either real events that have happened before or specific actions of specific people or certain things that are being done that translate certain principles. But the thing is that the more you know, the less shocked you're going to be. Like you're not going to walk into a room with emotion and you won't have anything to say. Even if the anything you have is residual knowledge, you're always going to be better placed when you have more information at your disposal. But the second thing about information is that having varied information often means that you are forced to think, right? Because again, debating is a thinking sport. You're forced to think, you're forced to consider your own bias. You're forced to answer the question of why you feel this way, why would this person think it in this way? What does this mean? Like, and I think very trusted because I think that there's a difference. This is an entirely personal. So I think the difference between being an ideal or like relying on repeating of the misinformation which is a single ideology as compared to adding a lot of information and using that information very well. Right. So when you have that sort of daily information, it makes it a lot easier for you to understand the rules, but also translate that into what you're doing. Right. So that's the very first thing. Even if you're not going to do anything, at the very least, study. Right. So this is study in terms of information. But the next thing you need to do is to study perspectives. Right. There's this thing that myself and this select group of people used to do when we approach tournament. This is we have mental profiles. In fact, the best data we do we have mental profiles of various people, both old and new debaters, people who we think could be threats, people who we think are interesting and are doing significant enough things. So knowing the perspective can often be the difference between losing and winning. Because you know your competition, you know where you need to fail to, you know how to, know, you know how to engage them when you do work or when you do have them in your room. And which is a lot. I'll pull back something that happened, but this was mostly in panel. For a while, I had a list of people in UI and DP that I had thought this were the people who I think are closest to threatening me. And I had it for an entirely separate reason, which I didn't end up using as much. But I kept a profile on them and I kept information on yes, their strength, their weakness. There's one particular person that said the biggest way for me to like me beating them is not really a matter of having better analysis. I think it's a matter of understanding them and then misinterpreting them to everyone else. It's dark art. It's a bit evil. But I don't mind evil. It's a word, it's a word. Like there was somebody who, I said this person is a very good speaker, but they often get trapped in their own analysis, which means that they have a lot to say. And so the only way I can beat them is by interrupting their speech. And so I would always ask them a POI. They would say something very random. But because people believe that I was being strategic with my POI, they would spend a lot of time thinking about what does this POI mean. Like maybe after instead of reinforcing those sort of things that you can do if you don't. But if you come at their own shop, do you have a question or comment? In the should you have a question or comment something like this? I'm not sure why your hand is up.
Sorry, good
So I
afternoon.
think I'm beginning. Yeah, good afternoon.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Your voice isn't clear at all. It sounds like there's a lot of um interference from whatever device you're using to speak.
So I feel like it might be my headphones. Let me just swap out for a sec. But you will please let me know if it's better after I make this swap.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, sorry, guys, can you guys hear me now? Like, if you can hear me, you can just put something in the chat or something because I'm looking at the chat now.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to continue. All right. So, you know, that is something you can only do when you have information, right? But information is something that is left to you, when you can only get information when you pay attention, right? And how do you pay attention? Like, if you're not speaking at a tournament, observe, check tab from time to time. For around 2 years of my life, there was never a weekend where I didn't check the tab of a tournament, even though I stopped speaking in tournaments for quite some time at that point. And it wasn't because like I like looking at spreadsheets, even though I kind of do. It was more because I knew that I needed to keep a pulse on everything that was happening. Right, to know who is good, know who isn't, what are the new stars that are working, who are the judges that are currently at the top level, right, that are likely to be the ones who determine my fate in the future, and what works for them, how do they give away, what do they prioritize there. And that's sort of how you do it. You have to constantly pay attention to yourself. It's a bit different. It's a business hobby, so it's likely the other things you do in life, likely. But you can also from time to time just look like a major tournament happens. Look over it. Who's there? Who's doing well? Who's not? Who is likely to be a problem or a challenge? If it's internal, you go to training like from day to day. You can tell people who are very good. You can tell people who have a lot more attention around them. And the second reason why this information is good is it allows you to hate properly. And I don't think that being motivated by hate is a bad thing at all. But for those of you who are nicer, let's not call it hate. Let's call it competition. Around when I first joined UILDC, nobody really cared much about me. I wasn't especially interested. So the way UILDC often has informal sets, which are like, based on the year that you enter or when you enter. And so around when I had entered, there were a lot of people who were a lot more interesting and a lot more important at that point. The most important of them then was Abims. To be fair, Abims had grown up a lot earlier, right? It was earlier than our set, but you saw it sort of got subsumed under our set, quote unquote, right? So around when they first popped in, because we had an internal tournament and then there was Expose and I think there was LGO. And so then a lot of the attention was Victor, JK, I think Johnson to some extent, but Abims was the golden boy. And when I finally decided I wanted to debate, one of the first things I set out, because to be fair, this was because I found that he was a Chelsea fan and he had won me in ABC final. But my very first target when I came into UILGC was I want to beat this boy. And that was my drive for days, right? I would show up every time I came to training and he was better than me. I went back home upset and I would take down notes to say, what did he say that I did not see? What words did he use? Was it his cadence? Was it like analysis? Or what did he do that I didn't do? What did he do that I couldn't do? And for quite some time, it was what pushed me to become a better version of myself. And when I had felt personally that I accomplished the Abim's goal, I set another target, right? There was a year of my life or so that was just dedicated to, I don't like how Mo talks about my speeches. So I'm going to make sure that I am better than Mo and I can consistently beat him. And setting targets for yourself, to be fair, it can pigeonhole you because you have to always keep in mind that the circuit is bigger than just one or two people. But it can help push you in the direction where this is what the standard is, this is what the level I want to be is, and that's what I want to do. But again, it's based on information. And the important thing about information is being honest with yourself. The truth is, 9 out of 10, there are people who can beat you in the circuit. 9 out of 10, there are people who can beat you comfortably. And this is regardless of the level of experience you've had and anything like that. Right? There are people who entered the circuit 3 months, like there are people who entered the circuit, 3 months after you did, or even 2 years after you did, and they'll be better than you. That's just it. Like I think I mentioned last year, there are people who, you know, there are people who Starlight entered debating like after, like people who had been around for time, and she was better than them. And it's not necessarily the sort of thing to make you feel down, because again, nobody's path is linear. But it's the sort of thing to tell you that you have to be honest in your evaluation of facts to say, okay, I think this person is currently better than me. What are they doing that I'm not? How are they moving to be better than me that I currently am not? And that sort of, honest evaluation is what helps you there. And finally, keeping enough information on the circuit often allows you to know what your opponents will do before time. If you know somebody, prefers a certain type of analysis, or often claims certain things, or has certain things that they prefer in debating, it makes it easier to plan your speech around preemptively canceling out that thing, or like just handling that thing before it happens. So that way, you have a more you know you have a more balanced engagement with this person. You probably are more likely to beat them because you know them before you met them, right? Like the element of surprise is always possible, but you will be more likely to win a debate when you are more prepared in the first place. So we've talked about studying and information. What's the next thing you need to do? Like push yourself from time to time. At the end of the day, debating is a sport, and with every sport, the more you do it or the more consistently you do it, the more likely it is that you're going to be successful. So what this means is that in the build up to a tournament, you should consistently push yourself to debate, to try to do things. So for example, every now and then, give like you know, you should be attending training somewhat consistently, or at the very least consistently, because if you're not consistent, you won't even get picked in the first place. But you should be speaking in many places, trying out new styles, experimenting with yourself. When you do that, you're in a better mental position to take on the debate. You're in a better mental position for the tournament because you're a lot more fit. The next thing to do in the pre-tournament planning is to always collect feedback and interact. So what I mean by this is it's easy to be narrow-minded when it's just you. It's easy to see only yourself in the version of yourself you want to see, right? Like so you see yourself in terms of the speeches you've had before, in terms of the wins or losses that you've had before. When you ask for feedback, when you talk to people, hey guy, what do you think about my speech? A lot of the time people won't have too much information for you. It's just the unfortunate fact of life. Judges are busy, other people are working on their lives, looking at other things, so maybe they're distracted. But every now and then, people will give you information, and every now and then, you can use that information to do a number of things. But thirdly, that information is often the best valuation of your perception currently. And perception can win you more rounds than you think. So the there's something we call social capital, right? Social capital is really just how your perception impacts how you win or lose. And yes, there are obviously negative implications to this. So there are times when people win rooms because their reputation suggests to judges that they ought to win the room, right? Unfortunately, I think that even if people are not malicious, social capital does affect. It's like if you see if there's a football match and you see well, not Real Madrid. Real Madrid have lost to some funny people this season. But let's say you saw Arsenal. Arsenal are fairly good these days. Unwatchable, but good. Um, if you see Arsenal are going to play against Bendel Insurance, or let's even use countries. If you see England are going to play against Nigeria, you are going to 9 out of 10 just mentally assume that England will win or has already won. And that presumption, of course, as a judge, shouldn't define what the outcome should be, but it certainly influences it. And so when you know this influence is inevitable, the best thing you can do is to work on shaping that influence. So feedback is one of the few ways that you have, knowing what your perception is, knowing if people think that you are, knowing if people think that you are improving or not, right? And if you cannot shape internal perception, you're not going to be able to shape external perception, right? It's not always easy. So if it's your first tournament, there's no real perception known about you, right? If you're from before the tournament, if you're already in the circuit, then then attend tournaments, right? Do online tournaments, push people, win, sometimes lose, right? Like because sometimes you will lose, but all of that contributes to shaping the perception that you are somebody that matters, you're somebody important. The more people see your name, like in the highest levels, the more likely it is that they intrinsically think of you as being very good. And that perception helps you as you move forward. And the more you like in the build up to tournaments, right? So if nationals is in 3-4 months, most people only start paying attention very close to the tournament. Yes. But if somebody sees that this person was in this online final, this online semi-final, they did this or that speech that somebody really liked, You are going to come to nationals with the expectation that you are good. And that expectation helps you. For one, there are people who just believe that you can never beat them. Right? There are, there are people who just believe that they can never beat you. And that perception means that they will not beat you. The best example I have for this is last national, right? In my very first round, I had two Veritas teams in my room, right? I had two Veritas teams in my room. One of them was, I think it was Jeff. And the funniest thing, oh yeah, and then Hard to Draw was before me. Genuinely speaking, Jeff would have beat me in that round because after my speech, there was enough, in my opinion, there was enough from CG and from his material, there was enough in his head to do something about it. But one of the main reasons he did was he just genuinely believed in his mind that he could not beat me. And so instead of trying to beat me and create the short diagonal that would have helped him, he was fighting for closing half. When the call comes out, it ends up being like I win. That's just my business. The rest of it is not like the rest of it does not concern me. But that's the sort of thing that only happens when you can create the idea that you are good or create the perception to people that you know what you're doing. I need to take a brief moment now to get something done. Okay. Yes, sir. Can you guys hear me now?
You're a bit
Sorry.
muffled.
Anybody? Okay. Is it breaking? Because I have my earphones on, so I'm just
No,
hoping I can be as clear as possible.
no, you're not so clear. If it's possible to take off the headphones.
Okay. Oh, yeah, no problem. No problem. I understand. So let me just fix that. Okay, sorry. There's a lot going on where I'm at, but I'm hoping that I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, fun stuff. Now, I think that not only does it create a perception, but constantly speaking, right, or constantly testing yourself often helps you know if and how you are improving. Right, so are you getting better? Are you making the same mistakes? Do you keep losing to the same person or set of persons, set of arguments? These are all things that you probably will not know unless if you have had the time to continue speaking and continue testing yourself. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to speak in every tournament in every way. Sometimes the goal is to put variety into it, right? So it's to speak with new people, to try new styles, is to get involved in a number of things, right? Maybe even do some things that don't make sense. But all of that in the pre-tournament phase often allows you to straighten out everything before you get to the point where it actually matters, right? You can stomach losing a final in an online debate or crashing out in the semis. It's a lot harder to do that when you're actually at the tournaments that you are trying to win. And that's the sort of way to prepare yourself to lose where you can lose in order to win where you are more likely to win. Like, if you're so afraid of failing and you're so afraid of, oh, I don't want to get this and that, then you're only going to put yourself in a position where failure is more likely, or failure occurs at maybe the worst possible position. So you've gotten a lot of information, you've scoped out people, right? You've gotten a lot of information, you've scoped out people, you've done some preliminary work. What do you do next? What is the next step in the pre-phase? And this is probably the last thing in the pre-phase. The last thing to do, realistically, is to think. Is to set goals for yourself, both for the tournaments and other things, and work on achieving them, right? It's to think about, it's to visualize success, essentially, and start working towards it, right? Allow yourself to go crazy and be delusional. Imagine yourself winning all the awards, including, what they call it, including in places where it's impossible for you to win, right? Or it would be impossible for you to win. Just having that mindset where you already start to practice success helps you, because it's easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I'm not going to win, right? It's easy to fall into the trap of, I'm not going to win, I'm not going to get anything. But if you are already at that point, then you've already lost. The way we sort of describe it, right, is this toxic, undeniable culture. And I call it toxic because, to be fair, it is. It's very uncomfortable, especially when you've collected L's back to back. But it is to go into every round genuinely believing that your effort will be enough, and to put in effort that is enough and even more than enough to create the outcome that you want, right? That way, whatever the outcome, you can at least hold some internal pride that it was not a skill issue, right? Like, I like to be honest with people and tell them that, yes, there is social capital, there's agenda, there's all of these things. Like, but the truth is that agenda that wants to agenda will agenda regardless of whatever you do. But there are ways that you can probably help yourself so that, if the person has heart, or, if the person isn't actually going to pull agenda or do anything like that, you're more likely to win. So just having that sort of mindset would help out a lot. So we started the pre-tournament, right? Just a few last things. So pre-tournament, actually attend camp, guys. Like, there are a lot of things you learn in camp, both from yourself and other around you. So, like, even better about being in camp with, everybody else who's chasing the same and similar goals as you. That it just makes you feel better. Like, the few times I've been in camp, I think I've only got camp in the way you guys know it. Right. So 2025, where we were going to Mo and Gro's place, it was not convenient in any way, right? It was not convenient in any way, but we did it, and doing it helped out. 2024, where we were entering school and all of that, it was chaotic, it was messy, it was fun, but it helped. It created a feeling of closeness. It helped you know that you were part of something, and that something was worth fighting for. That something was worth inconveniencing yourself for. And there were days when I didn't have the motivation to keep working myself. But what made me keep pushing was that there was somebody else somewhere who was also in camp that wanted what I wanted as desperately and as badly as I did. And that feeling, I really don't know how to explain it to you. I think that if you've experienced it yourself, you know what I mean, right? If you've done UIODC trips or done camp, even the smaller camps that we have, right? I think that camps now are a bit different to how they were before, right? And I'm not going to be the old man yelling at the cloud, but there was a way camp was before that was in some ways a lot more strict, right? In some ways a lot more intense. I cannot personally tell you if I think that it was better then than it is now, because I think that, I have biases on either side, right? But just being there helps you. And then try and rest. The truth is, if you die before a tournament, it will be very sad. We will we will probably mourn you, right? If if you were important enough, maybe the next tournament will have a memorial for you or they'll dedicate a tournament to you. But if you die, you have died. Uh, if you break down because you're sick, you've broken down. And so try to take care of yourself as much as you can, right? As much as you want to practice everything everywhere, sleep when you have the opportunity to sleep, eat food as much as you can, right? Try to keep yourself in a good enough physical condition because if you are sick and dying at a tournament, it won't turn out well for you. You will probably suffer a lot and suffer for nothing because you can tell yourself later that, oh, the reason why I didn't win this or that was because I was sick. But if being sick is something that you could have prevented, then there's always going to be that something in your head that goes, yeah, maybe I should have still taken care of myself better. There's a lot that goes into winning tournaments, but you need to be in the best mental and physical state to win a tournament 9 out of 10, right? So, and even if what's going on with you is emotional, also sort through it. Like there are people who try to use debates to power through everything, and sometimes it will work, right? I know somebody who won a tournament purely off of the only off of the suffering he had in his life at that point. But I also know somebody who was going to win a tournament, but they entirely derailed themselves because they were remembering somebody broke their heart. So, try to take care of your mental state. Talk to people who you feel comfortable talking to, right? You have friends, right? You have friends. Talk to your friends. There will probably be people in your LDC who you can talk to, who will have conversations with you, and those sort of things will make you feel better and help manage your emotions and put you in the best possible state. So do that, do those sort of things, um, right? Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is being in a position where you can win, where you're more likely to win in the first place. All right, so we've done pre-tournament, right? Let's talk about the tournament itself. The first thing is try to reduce the extras in a tournament. What I mean by extras are there are a lot of things you can do at a tournament, right? You know, like good, bad, evil, whatever you call it, all of that. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure that those things don't become the main focus of the tournament, at least if you want to win, right? You can go to nationals to have fun. Right? Like, no, I won't even step in a way, but I don't think that you should be taking away the opportunity from other people who would be working hard to get to nationals to try and win something so you can go to nationals and have fun. Uh-huh. The small counter to that argument is that if they were so desperate to win, maybe they should have won the slot off you in the first place. So yeah, I don't really have a serious counter argument to that. But in the first place, you have to focus. So if there's somebody you hate or you have beef with, coming to that tournament thinking that you want to win is not the place to revisit that beef. It's not the place to start building on it again to be like, oh, this person, right? Just minimize the extras. This doesn't mean don't take part in socials, don't take part in all these other things, but keep your focus on I want to win. What do I have to do to win? Do I have to train more? Do I have to look at this and look at that? If you don't, then you're going to derail yourself and you're going to be in a very bad position. The second thing is you should, in the tournament, you should be able to keep moving, right? So there's something that is one of the many UILDC things to see and comes up infrequently on a certain somebody's status, which is calm, restructure, move. And it's just the idea of what should be your ethos when things happen. And this is both positive and negative, which is calm down, right? Because it's easy to be emotive and it's easy to react. Restructure, look at what went wrong, what went right, and move, right? So if you, like, all right, so just calm down, make sense of things, restructure, find out what you want to wrong, find out what went right, and then move. Keep it moving because if you stay static, then you're probably going to end up stuff. Um, because if you stay static, if it's a good thing and you stay static, there's every possibility that it moves past. The bad thing and you stay static, then spend so long thinking it's the negative that it impacts you. At 2024 nationals, ironically, that me and Victor won, there was a round where something very stupid happened, and so I was upset. But I wasn't really upset. I was upset at Victor, and so my partner at the time. And so me and Victor did not talk. Like we weren't talking, we weren't like communicating, we weren't planning anything together. The immediate next round, we almost switched that round because the animosity was so much that we spent so long complaining about the previous round that we didn't prep for the next one. We didn't think of, oh, what should I do here and how should I handle it? That's the sort of thing that you shouldn't be doing to yourself, right? Calm down, make sense of what has happened, and decide on what is the best way to navigate it. All right. Now, in tournaments, round to round, the next thing is building goodwill. The truth is, everyone, like people are human for the most part. And so they are vulnerable to human things. What this means is that you should be looking at the humanity. You've been around, see the job, ask them, oh, what did they think about your speech? Ask them for feedback, talk to them, try to be cordial. I'm not saying you should go and be, what's the term for this? I'm not saying that you should uh, be overly like nice to them or anything of that nature, or to the point where it looks like you're trying to buy favor. But just making sure that people feel like you're not a bad person or feel comfortable with you is very likely to create positive outcomes. But two is more likely to make other people, look out for you. If you're somebody who shouts at a judge after a round, then people are just going to be like, yeah, I don't want to handle this person next time. Right. Like judges don't want to judge you. When they judge you, they'll say, yeah, I'll just give him the fault. It's not shout, then you shout. And so you put yourself in a very bad position. The next thing is, and again, I'm talking about the restructuring, but we need to do this. The next thing is, how do you build perception in the middle of a tournament? Um, and this comes down to how do you take your wins and losses, right? Just go around. They talk to the person, talk what the person said, whether one you that, oh, guy, you know, say you lie about this thing. And some of it is not strategic at all. It's just, debaters doing debaters thing. But some of it is strategic. It's going down to, psyching people out, letting them know that, I figured you, I know this and I know that. And that sort of mindset thing puts you in the best position because you it tells people that you're aware, it tells people that you know what's happening. And but it also sort of informs judges that this is somebody who matters, this is somebody who pays attention and is very involved in all of it. And that sort of perception, right, that you matter affects how judges take or handle the rest of your speeches, the rest of what you do. Right. When you win, you can whine somebody, oh yeah, guy, I saw this argument that you're doing, that and that. Just being that sort of person creates the idea that you know what you're doing. The final thing I think to talk about doing in the tournament, if you're looking to win, is to constantly improve. The truth is that the requirements at the start of the tournament are often not the requirements at the end of it. Sometimes you need to push yourself a little more, you need to be a little better, a bit more refined. All the information you might not have had or might not have had as accurately before the tournament, you now have in the tournament. So you should be using that to refine your speeches to make sure you're not making the same mistakes. Because when judges give you feedback, they also have mental expectations. They think, okay, you have told this person this thing. If you repeat the same mistake, they are going to be frustrated. That's the sort of thing that ends up with people undervaluing your contributions. By comparison, if you improve, if you do something slightly different, then they look at you as a slightly different person. So yeah, that's most of the information, right? I understand that there's another session by 4. So I think I'm just going to wrap up now. And if you have questions, please put them in the text space so I can address them.
All right, guys, if you have questions, please do ensure to ask. I'm sure many of us have questions on what has been said. Feel free to put them in the text space or anywhere else. Thank you. Please, if you have any questions, please ask. Please ask questions. Thank you. Alex, I have a question. Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
All right. So I know you already talked about like gathering information and just keeping yourself abreast with sufficient knowledge when preparing for a tournament. My question is on the case of like case filing, you know, that is the process of gathering that information. How do you think I can gather information in a manner that is relevant to debating and is relevant to what CAPs or tournaments CAPs are most likely to give in terms of motion and topics for a tournament? So, for example, I'm preparing for PANs or national. How do I case file in a manner that the information I gather is relevant? Because sometimes we may gather information, and when we go into a tournament, most of what we gather doesn't really is never really covered, or we're just left there feeling like our information is useless. So how do you think one can case file in a manner that is likely to be relevant to a tournament, if you know what I mean?
Okay, sorry. So yeah, I don't know why I left the call. So Alex, I understand your question, but the unfortunate answer is you cannot perfectly case file, right? The truth is a lot goes into comments, right? Like, you know, how people do and all of that. But this means is, and there's an infinite amount of things that could be the subject of debate. This means that it's impossible to perfectly case file. All you can do is to keep a wide enough, information to the point where it's unlikely that anything would shock you when it does pop up, right? So if you if you don't have that wide information bank, you don't have anything to fall back on when the information eventually does become relevant, right? But if you have it, then when it does come up and when it does become important, then you're more likely to be in a better position. The next thing is that at the end of the day, judges are human and judges are vulnerable to the same impulses that you have. What it means is that things like recent events and all of those things, I think are very likely to show up in judges' biases and the things that they're going to bring up in the parliament. So, for example, if you haven't read up on Iran and Israel and all of what is happening there at this point, then you're not doing yourself any favors because clearly something that is topical and it's happening right now. And so it's very likely that people will put it into their emotions, right? That's the sort of thing to do. Look at what is topical. It won't always be on message of what it is in your face, but it can give you a close enough idea. And then two, just have enough variety to the point where even if something comes up that you're not all the more familiar with, you are in a slightly better position to get yourself up and running. I think I unfortunately have to leave the call now. If there are any other questions or anything, you can always send me a DM and I will address it.
All right then, Alex, no problem. Thank you. Halim, I can see your question, so I will make sure to forward that question to him in his in his DM so that he can have a conversation with you. I hope that's okay, Halim.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Thank
Thank you guys so much for So thank you guys so much for coming.